Hi everyone, I'm Gertie and welcome to a new month on Patreon. I am thrilled to be bringing you the Las Vegas halter top this month. So I've been thinking about this type of pattern for a while. I love those vintage 50s patterns that have a big collar combined with a halter strap. And that's something I've wanted to do for years now, so I'm so excited to be getting to do it this month. Now, the idea is that it's going to be something that interchanges with our L series, so L'Amour, Liz, Loretta, all of that. So that's why we called it the Las Vegas halter top. So this is a top in its own right that can be made with or without a peplum, with or without the collar, but you can also make it as an interchangeable bodice to use with your L'Amour skirts, your Liz skirts, Loretta shorts, the charm circle skirt, charm double circle skirt. There are many options out there. So you can make a halter top, or you can make a romper or a dress. So many things you can do with this pattern. Now, besides being inspired by 50s looks, I also was thinking a lot about Elvis this month. Now, you all know I'm always thinking about Elvis, but I was especially thinking about him this month with the release of the Baz Luhrmann feature film coming later. So, wanted to do a little homage to Elvis with a black pleather callback to the '68 comeback special. And then we also did a white dress version inspired by his fabulous rhinestone jumpsuit. So this collar is very Elvis, but it can also just have a very fun, flirty 50s look. So let's take a look at these two garments on the dress forms because I want to take you through some of the features. So on the black pleather, this is also very Grease, by the way. So if you want to do a little Olivia Newton-John moment, here she is. So you can see this one has the collar sewn into the halter strap. One thing I love about the construction on this collar is it has this folded, floating look, and that's because of this swing tack hidden underneath, which helps it float on top of the halter strap. The halter strap is self-faced and interfaced. This bust piece is really beautifully gathered. There's a lot of gathers underneath the bust to give it this really beautiful look on the bust line. Nice smooth midriff. And then the peplum. Now you can see we left the peplum unfinished at the hem on this one because pleather is, it's a little tricky to hem and it looks great just clean finished. So we just rotary cut that one. And if you want to take a look at the back here, I love the shape on the back. It's a little different from your standard halter top with the way the straps curve around the back and then meet up with the front halter strap here. There is an overlap at the center back neck and then two hooks and bars at center back. A lapped separating zipper, which is something that we haven't done before, I don't think, on Patreon. So you will be able to separate this at the waist and it comes on and off that way. And then the peplum there's just an opening here so it lays really nice and flat. And then there's a hem at the center back of the peplum. And let's take a look at this cute strawberry moment here. So as you can see, no collar on this one. Contrast halter straps. It's really fun to play around with two different fabrics as well. So no collar, nice clean finish on the halter strap. And then we have sewn this to the Loretta shorts rather than doing the peplum to make a romper. And if you want to take a look at the back here, so same thing with the overlap at center back, these curved halter straps, and then the lap zipper sewn at the waist to the shorts. So many different options and so many different things that you can do with this pattern. So I hope you love it. I'm so excited about this one. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's take a little walk through the pattern pieces themselves. So we have scaled these down so we can look at them all together. So the first piece I want to show you is the bust front. Now you can see that there's two notches here and this gets gathered between the notches. There's quite a bit of gathering under the bust on this piece. And then this is the armhole right here where the halter strap is going to get attached, and this would be the center front. Now this gets gathered into the midriff front. So you can see there are notches to match here for the gathering. So you can see that's quite a lot of gathering, and that's what makes it look really beautiful at the under bust. So this is going to be cut on the fold and sewn to the upper bust. All of these pieces are lined, by the way. Everything is lined except for the peplum. Okay, so then you have your bodice back, which has a dart in it, and it also has a sort of armhole shape here so that the strap can get sewn onto it. Okay, so speaking of straps, we have our front halter strap, and there's a matching circle there, and this wraps all the way around to the back of the neck, and there's a hook and eye back there. Then you have your back halter strap, and what happens is these two get attached, so this kind of gets inserted into the halter strap back here for that really cool shape on the back of this garment. Okay, so these you're going to cut out interfacing in those, as well as an inner and outer piece. Then you have your collar. If you're making the collar is optional. You're going to cut interfacing in this as well, and this gets sandwiched into the front halter strap, folds out, and then there's a swing tack to attach it to the halter strap. And then finally we just have the peplum pieces. Again, these are optional, unlined. So you're going to cut one of the front on the fold. You can see it looks like a little flared skirt. One of the front on the fold, and then two of the back, because there's a slit up the center back for the opening with the back lapped zipper. So those are all the pieces. It's, you know, there aren't a lot, but it looks like a really complex garment, so that's nice. Okay, let's talk a little bit about fabrics and supplies for the halter top. So if this is your first time making this garment, or if you just want something that is easy breezy to wear for summer, I would really recommend cotton fabrics, cotton wovens. We did a couple versions in these fun fruit prints for me and Susie, and this strawberry print that I used for my romper is just a quilting cotton. So very easy to sew, easy to care for. So this would be a great choice. Any broadcloth, poplin, cotton lawn, those kinds of non-stretch cottons would be great. You could also use a stretch woven, like a sateen blended with some spandex, which is what we used for Susie's halter and Stanwyck skirt look. Now, keep in mind that if you use something with spandex blended in, you will probably need to either go down a full size or just take in the side seams, because the garment is going to fit bigger than you want it to, most likely. Okay, so keep that in mind in terms of the fit. Now, for the two Elvis-inspired looks that we did, I chose this stretch pleather, which I'd never worked with anything like this before, and it's surprisingly easy to sew. We will give you links for where you can get this. And this is a totally different look, obviously, but really fun if you want to do something Elvis-inspired, Grease-inspired. There's a lot you can do with this. Okay, so this is just has a slight stretch to it, but again, you might need to size down or take in those side seams. Then for the Elvis-inspired dress that I did, this is a white cotton twill with spandex blended in. This has a lot more stretch than the other, so I would say that this probably has 2% spandex and this has a little bit more, so you can see how much more this stretches. I wish I had gone down a full size on the garment in this one, so just keep that in mind. If you have a higher stretch content, you're going to need to size down. And then, so some other choices would be, you know, if you want to do a contrast strap and collar, that's a really fun look, like I did for my strawberry print romper. I just chose a linen rayon blend, non-stretch woven, and you could make the whole halter top out of something like this. And this is about what I'm going to be using today, is like a cotton and linen blend with no stretch. So great choices. Lining fabric, I would recommend no stretch. So even if you choose a fabric with stretch for your outer halter, it's totally fine and even recommended to use a non-stretch lining fabric to stabilize everything and to keep it from stretching out as you're wearing it, because this is something that you want to be very fitted to your body. So we just used a cotton sateen or a broadcloth for the lining, which is great and very breathable for warm weather. Interfacing. You're going to need to interface your straps and your collar. So we just chose a lightweight woven interfacing for this. And then just a few other supplies you're going to need. We used a separating zipper, 10 inches. So it has to separate at the bottom so you can pull the top off this way, right? You can't have the zipper go all the way down to the bottom of the peplum because you want it to fall really nicely at the opening, okay? So the separating zipper goes down to the waist. And we're gonna show you how to shorten this today to your exact bodice length. Then we have a hook and bar, and you're gonna need 2 sets of these for the back of the halter strap. And then finally, you just need your all-purpose polyester thread. All right, so that's it for supplies and fabrics. Let's get started sewing. So we are going to start with those bust pieces and sew gathering stitches between the notches within the seam allowance. So you're gonna sew 1 at 1/2 inch and 1 at 1/4 inch-ish, okay? So I've already sewn my gathering stitches, so the next thing I'm gonna do is just start to gather them up. And I always think of this step as sort of like a preliminary gathering step because we don't know exactly how tight we need to pull these gathers until we pin it to the midriff, right? So we're just kind of guesstimating our gathering at this point. So I'll do it about like that just to get it started on both sides. There we go. And now I'm going to sew the center front seam on the bust. So I will put these right sides together and pin and then stitch at 5/8. Now the nice thing about this top is that we don't have to do any seam finishing except for on the peplum because everything on the bodice is fully enclosed. So we don't need to do any finishing of the seam allowances. Okay, just making sure my settings are all correct. I'm going to sew this center front seam. Okay, we're going to press this open. And now we're going to sew the bust to the midriff. Okay, so grab your midriff piece, looks like this. We're gonna put them right sides together. And we're going to pin at a few key places, right? So I like to pin at each end first. Then I like to match my notches. And now we can get a sense of if I've done the correct amount of gathering and how much I need to adjust it. Okay, so let's take a look here at these gathering stitches. I need to pull them up quite a bit more. There's a lot of gathering on this top at the bust, which I really love the look of. Gives you a really beautiful shape on the bust line. Okay, so get those gathers nice and distributed between your notches so that the seam allowances are flat. And we're going to pin these in place. And I'm going to continue pinning on the other side. I like to take a little more time than usual pinning when there are gathers involved because you want them to be nice and evenly distributed. Okay, once you're happy with your pinning, we're going to sew this seam. And I always like to sew with my gathers, with the gathering side up facing me, but people have different preferences, so whichever you like to do. But I really like to keep an eye on where the gathers are, so I don't get any of those weird folds and pleats you can get sometimes with gathers. Okay, so once you're at the end of that seam, you can just kind of check that you're happy with the way your gathers look, that they're nice and flat, no weird tucks or anything like that. And if you're satisfied, then we can grade these seam allowances. So when there are gathers, I tend to like to, instead of grading each seam individually, I will just hold my scissors at an angle like this. So angle them towards you like this, and that will help just kind of create an automatic grade on your gathers, which is nice. You can see how they're kind of angling up there. So trimming as one with my scissors angled down to about 1/4 inch. Getting this confetti effect here with all these seam allowances. I have a lot of threads to get rid of too, all those gathering threads. So just take a moment to tidy up here. So next thing we're going to do is press these seam allowances as one up towards the bust. So I'm going to lay it over my hand just to get a little bit of a raised surface here. And I would say be careful that you don't like smush your gathers down, because you don't want to get weird pleats or anything. We just want to press these seam allowances up, and I just try to isolate my pressing onto the seam itself, not flat where the gathers are. You can give it a little steam. This fabric I'm using today is a cotton linen blend, so it responds really well to steam. Okay, so you can spend a little time if you want here from the right side, making sure you don't have a little fold there. But you can see already it's pretty satisfying how this is starting to come together. Okay, so next we're going to focus on the bodice back. So let's put this to the side. And I'm going to grab my bodice back pieces. And I want to show you that I have already stabilized the center back, and this is where the zipper is going to go. And if you've watched any of my videos, you know that I always like to stabilize my zipper opening to prevent any stretching or rippling or anything when you put your lap zipper in. So I've already done the stabilizing there. We need to sew the darts on the back. I've already done one of them. So let's do this one. Fold right sides together, pin at the top of the dart. I always put a snip at the end of the leg just so it's easy to match. And then just pin all the way up the leg, making sure that you are matched on both sides. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and sew this dart following your marked line here. And just be real careful. Your last couple stitches should be right on the fold there. You don't want to veer off too suddenly. That's how you get a pucker in your darts if you ever struggle with puckers. And I'm going to tie this off by hand. And then we're going to press this dart towards center back. So this is a great place to use a ham. And there we go. You can do a little final press from the side seams. Grab your bodice front again, and we're going to put it right sides together with the bodice back. And you'll have a notch to match up to your midriff seam. This should be pretty straightforward, just sewing top to bottom, both side seams. I'm going to pin both first. see this fabric frays quite a bit, but again, it's going to be fully enclosed with the lining that we're going to do in a few steps down the road. So you'll see none of this will really matter because we're going to have a nice clean finish on the inside. And the opposite side. And let's press these open. Okay, so I have stitched my side seams, pressed them open, and next we are going to move on to the peplum. And I've already constructed my peplum. I'll just walk you through it because it's super simple. I did serge my vertical edges and the lower edge on all the peplum pieces because, like I said, this is the only part of the garment that is unlined, so you're going to want to do some sort of treatment to finish those seam allowances. And then I went ahead and sewed the peplum front to the peplum backs at the side seams and pressed them open. So we have a fully constructed peplum, which is just like a little skirt here. So grab your bodice, and we're going to sew these two together. So put the peplum right sides together with the bodice, and I would start by matching up your side seams first. So you can just put a pin through. I like to be as precise as possible with, oops, and I'm not right sides together. Let's try that one more time. Right sides together. Don't want exposed seam allowances on the skirt. Right sides together. And matching up those side seams exactly. And then you can match any notches and the center back. So I'm just going to take a little time here to pin these two pieces together. Okay, and once you're all pinned, now we're going to sew this seam 5/8 of an inch, just using your regular stitch length. Okay, so once you've sewn that seam, just double check your work. I always like to check that my side seams are matching and I don't have any weird folds like the ones that you sometimes get when you're sewing something that's really flared to something that is not really flared. So looks good. Next thing we're going to do is grade these seam allowances and press them up. So same idea as with the midriff seam, but now we're focusing on the waistline seam. And so you can do them separately, grade 1 to about, 1/8 of an inch or a little bit taller, and then the next to 1/4 inch. Or you can use that trick that I just talked about on the last seam where you angle your scissors towards you. Okay, so now that I've graded, I'm just gonna do a few clips just throughout the curviest parts of the waist. So sort of around the sides. It's good to just release this seam. A few clips here and there, maybe about every 1/2 inch. And now we're going to press the seam allowance up towards the bodice. Okay, so the peplum is sewn on, and now the final thing to do is to hem the peplum. So what you're going to do is press it up 5/8 of an inch all the way around, and then top stitch it at 1/2 inch. So we've done a lot of hems like this before, so I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera and let you do yours, and then we'll come back and talk next steps. Okay, we are ready to sew the lining to the bodice. Now let's talk about the lining prep first, because I've gone ahead and done a few of these steps, as you'll see, because a lot of them were the same as the bodice, right? So you're gonna sew, this is my lining fabric, by the way. It's similar color, but you can see it has this texture on it. It's a little darker, so you should be able to tell the difference between the top and the lining. But same steps with the gathering stitches, center front, bust seam, midriff seam, back darts, sewing your side seams, pressing them open. And then the final thing is to do a line of stay stitching at 5/8 of an inch around the waistline and press the seam allowance towards the wrong side of the lining. Now to do this, you're going to need to clip in just a few places, like at the back around that curvy area, just so that you're able to fully press that up. Okay, so now we're ready to put the lining together with the bodice. And there are a few special steps I'm going to take you through here. You're going to start by putting them right sides together. I'm going to just match at a few key points. And I'm going to show you my special clean finish technique. Now you might have seen this before in one of my videos here, or like on the L'Amour online class. This is sort of a special technique for getting a clean finish at the back neckline in conjunction with a lap zipper. So it's just a few measurements to keep track of, but it's not hard, I promise you. So with the two pieces pinned together, the lining and the outer fabric, we are going to place them with the bodice right side facing up and then fold the lining over it. They are right sides together. And now I'm going to start working on the right side. Now the right side, as you look at the back of the garment, is the underlap side of the lap zipper, okay? And on the underlap side, or your right side as you look at it, you are going to turn these two seam allowances as one 1/2 inch towards you. Okay, so see how I'm grabbing both those seam allowances together, folding them towards me 1/2 inch and pinning them in place. Okay, so you have what I call a nested effect here with those two seam allowances sort of rolled inside each other. And then I'm going to match at this point here. Okay, now we're going to go to the left side, which is the overlap side of the zipper. And we're going to take the lining and fold it 7/8 of an inch out. We're folding this one on its own 7/8 of an inch out. And you can see I'm kind of guesstimating here because I don't have my ruler in front of me, but I promise you it's going to be super accurate, about 7/8 of an inch. And then the outer bodice is 5/8 of an inch. So what I'm looking for, just to give you an idea, is a 1/4 inch gap between the two. Okay, so I've folded them separately, but they're still nested within each other like the other side. And then I'm going to pin them in place. And the reason for this is when I turn it right side out, I'm going to get a nice clean corner, and the lining is going to be beautifully placed so it's not on top of the zipper. If you've ever sewn a lap zipper and been frustrated with how the lining or the facing covers the zipper on the inside, this is a cool trick that will take care of that problem. Okay, so now we're going to stitch from one side all the way to the other, but we're going to break our stitching between the circles at the underarm, okay? So from here to here at each underarm, we're going to leave open, and that's because that's where the halter strap gets attached, okay? So I'm going to just pin all the way around. I'm going to fill in a few pins. And if you need to, at those circles, give yourself a little X so you don't keep stitching there. That's always a good idea, so that you don't stitch at the underarm. Then you can do that. Okay, so I'm going to start stitching at the underlap folded side here, and just start stitching right at the edge of that fold. And you can see I'm coming up to my first circle already. So I'm going to back stitch here and cut my thread. And then I'm going to skip this underarm area and I'm going to start stitching again at the next circle. And I'm going to pivot at my center front seam. This is sort of a sweetheart point here, so you want to be sure to be accurate there. And now I'm coming up to my 2 pins on top of each other to remind me to break my stitching again. And pick it up at the next circle. Okay, and there we go. All right, so next steps. We want to be sure to clip to each one of these circles as close as you can without cutting through your stitching. Next, we are going to cut across these corners here, where we did that fancy folding technique. And now we're going to grade our seam allowances. And here I'm going to really take my time to trim each of these separately. So anywhere there's stitching, you don't bother with the seam allowances in the open area between your circles. But everywhere else you're going to want to grade your seam allowances separately. So the lining can be about 1/8 of an inch, and then the bodice itself will be 1/4 inch. So I'm going to continue this all the way around, grading those seam allowances. Okay, and just a few final things before we turn it right side out. You might want to just clip away from the center front point. And you can also do a few notches around these outer curves of the sweetheart neckline. So just a few little notches like that, since it is an outer curve. Okay, and one final thing I do want to mention is that it's a good idea to clip next to these folded in seam allowances. Just do a little clip there, and you'll see why when you try to understitch it. It's because it will twist otherwise, like that. Okay, so now we can finally turn this right side out, and you can just kind of poke those little corners out with your finger. So this is the underlap side. You can see those are nice and flush with each other. And then let's take a look at the overlap side. So you have a nice little finished corner there, and then the lining will turn in, and we're going to hand stitch this over the zipper. So see how nice that looks? Just a little extra step. Makes it look nice and polished. Okay. So now we're going to understitch the lining. So we're going to start, and this is where that clip I was just talking about. This will allow you to orient those seam allowances underneath the lining. Start at that edge and just holding these two layers kind of taut like this, and make sure you're catching your seam allowances underneath your stitching here. And I'm stitching about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam line. And I'm stuck. This is where I broke my stitching the first time at the first circle. So the understitching is going to have to be in 3 different stages here too. So I'm going to skip that part between the circles. And you do, even with your understitching, you have to pivot a little bit at the sweetheart point. Okay, now we can press, now that we've understitched. I'm just going to kind of roll the lining up to the upper edge here to get a nice little crisp edge, and then press it flat. And this is where we clipped into the seam allowances at the circle. So you can just turn those seam allowances out. So this is where we're going to apply that halter strap around the underarm. So at these open areas, I would recommend, as you go, just pinning them together, because we're going to baste them together in the next step. And now around the curve of the sweetheart neckline, just press it nice and flat. Okay, so next step is going to be to do that machine basting where the seam allowances are raw between the circles. So use a long machine stitch here, so 4 to 5 millimeters, and then we're going to baste these seam allowances together at 1/2 inch. Okay, same thing on the other underarm. Okay, so that is the final step in this little section. And look, we have something that's looking a lot like a top. And next we're gonna move on to the zipper. So I don't think we've ever done a separating zipper here on Patreon. So I wanna just talk through shortening your zipper if you need to. So we've been using these nylon coil separating zippers, which are a lot easier to work with than the metal ones. So just keep that in mind because you can easily shorten them to the length you need. So you want the length of your zipper, the stop should be at the waist. So I just measured here by placing the zipper up to the top. And then you want to create a stop right at the upper edge of the back bodice. So I shortened the zipper by creating little thread stops. This is just a zigzag thread stop on either side. So you know how you would normally shorten a non-separating zipper by zigzagging over the teeth? You're gonna do it twice, once on each side. And then I just kind of trimmed away the nylon teeth on the tape above it. So, you know, the nylon coils are really nice for that reason, is because you can just kind of use the edge of your scissors to kind of grade away the nylon teeth there. And then I got a little overexcited on this side and I cut the teeth off entirely. But you know what? It doesn't actually really matter because these seam allowances are going to be folded in inside the top, so we can make it look nice. So first thing we're going to do is press in our seam allowances. So the underlap side, which is the right side as we're looking at the top, we're going to continue to press it in 1/2 inch all the way down. And you can continue to press this back edge of the peplum as well. And we will be top stitching this in a later step. But for now, we're just focusing really above the waistline. So pressing this in 1/2 inch. Remember, we turned it in 1/2 inch up at the neckline when we did that clean finish trick. So just continue that all the way down. And then same thing on the left-hand side, or the overlap side, we're gonna press it in, but on this side, you're gonna be pressing it in the full seam allowance, so 5/8 of an inch. And again, it's what we did at the top here. Okay, so we're going to start by pinning the underlap side. So just like with any lapped zipper, we are going to, you can open it up here if that helps, place the teeth just next to the fold. All right, so you're placing the zipper behind the fold, aligning the teeth so they're just next to the fold, and then we're going to pin down the teeth, next to the teeth, with the heads of the pin facing us so that we can easily pull them out as we're stitching here. Like so. All right, so now we are going to stitch this half of the zipper. So you're going to want to change to a zipper foot. And I'm just adjusting my needle so that it's to the left of my zipper foot. And you may have one of those zipper feet where you have to adjust the foot to whichever side of the needle, but mine is so that you have to adjust the needle itself. Okay, and we're going to start stitching here at the top, right next to that fold. Oops. Stitch length should be about 2.5 here. And be very careful to keep the lining free, okay? You don't want to accidentally catch the lining in your stitching here. You're just stitching through the bodice, the seam allowance below it, and then through the zipper tape. Now, as I get close to the zipper pull, I'm going to stop with the needle down, lift up my presser foot, and just get that out of the way. And then you also need to be really careful at the bottom of the zipper here. Use your hand wheel once you get close to this plastic part here, because it could break your needle. We don't know. Let's see. Yeah, see, my needle is not going to like that. So I'm going to back stitch before I get to that point. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to stop my stitching right before the stop underneath there. And you can always hand stitch this tape on the bottom here if it's kind of flaring out like that. Okay, so now we're going to do the overlap side of the zipper. So trim away any threads here. A lot going on. Okay, there we go. All right, so close the zipper all the way. And now we are going to place this fold over the zipper teeth and pin to the left of the zipper through these seam allowances and through the tape underneath. Okay, so you should know that you're pinning to the left of the zipper teeth. All right, so you should still be able to open and close the zipper even when it's pinned like this. And we're going to be top stitching 3/8 of an inch from the fold and creating the overlap on the zipper. Now you do want to make sure that your waistline seams match at the bottom, so you can go ahead and pin that first if that helps. Okay, and I'm going to give myself a pin to stop before I get to that plastic stop at the end. That would definitely break my needle. Okay, so if you want to check that you pinned it in the right place, make sure that you can still open the zipper, and this is what it should look like on the underside. And we're going to be stitching just 3/8 of an inch from the fold right here through the top and through the zipper tape underneath. Okay, so I need to switch my needle to the other side of the zipper foot. And be really careful at the top. You want to make sure you don't stitch through the teeth up here. And just take it slow. This stitching is very visible, so don't rush through this part. Okay, I'm going to stop with my needle down real quick, and I'm going to open the zipper here. And be really careful here. I'm about to get to the stop. And then I'm going to back stitch. And there we go. I definitely recommend using thread that matches your fabric. Unlike me, I'm using the contrast thread so that you can see it, thread that's a little bit darker. But you'll probably be happier with the look of it if you use thread that matches your fabric really well. Okay, so that is your zipper stitched in there. So let's just test it here. And there you go. You have a nice separating zipper. And like I said, you can hand tack the other side, the opposite side of the zipper tape to the seam allowances underneath to keep it from opening like that. Okay, so that's your zipper, and we're gonna move on to the next step. Okay, I'm gonna take you through a few finishing steps for the bodice. So you're gonna need to stitch this center back vertical seam on the peplum opening. So go ahead and top stitch that. Or if you don't want visible stitching, you could always do a little hand stitch on the inside, totally up to you. But since you have the zipper stitching, you could just kind of continue it down. There will be a little gap because of the zipper stop. So you're going to do that stitching at like 1/2 inch, right? So you just catch the seam allowances in your stitching. And then the next thing to do is to do the hand stitching of the lining, okay? So we've done this on many a dress up to this point. So this should look pretty familiar, but we've already turned in that seam allowance, and you're just going to pin it in place so that you're just covering the seam allowance underneath. And you're going to need to fold in the top of the zipper tape and the lining seam allowance here. And you're just going to need to spend a little time with this. So pinning all the way around, make sure this is turned in. And it should look about like this. All right. All the way around, you're going to slip stitch that in place. And same thing on the other side of the zipper. Make sure that you turn in the upper edge of the zipper tape, turn in that seam allowance here, and this is how we get this nice clean finish with all of that folding that we did earlier on. So see how you have the zipper overlap, the zipper teeth, and then the lining, and then this gets hand stitched in place. Okay, so you're gonna spend a little time with that. That's a little hand stitching that you're gonna need to do. So get through all of that, and then we're going to come back and we're going to work on the halter strap. Okay, so we are going to start the process of the halter strap now. So this is one of the more complex parts of this pattern. So just hang in there. I'm going to explain how it all works to you. I have already, so you're going to have 2 sets for each side. You're going to have one that is interfaced and one that is not. And the interface side will be the one that's the outermost side as the halter is worn. And then the uninterfaced side is basically like a self-facing on the inside of the halter strap. So you can see I've already completed these steps that I'm about to show you on an interfaced set. The underarm seam is sewn and the outer edge is stay stitched, notched, and pressed in. Okay, but I'm going to show you all of that on an uninterfaced set. So you're going to put the underarm seam right sides together, matching notches, and we're going to stitch this little underarm seam just with your regular straight stitch at 5/8 of an inch. And now we're going to press this open. And the next thing we're going to do is stay stitch at 5/8 of an inch all the way, see how it's kind of a U shape now? All the way around the outermost curved edge of the U. Okay, so I'm going to stay stitch at 5/8 of an inch all the way around. Okay, so I'm going to grab my scissors and I'm going to notch. This is an outer curve, which means we are going to notch it rather than clip around the sort of curviest lower part here. You're going to cut out little triangles about every inch or so, really. And this will, well, you'll see what it's going to do, but it's going to help the seam allowance curve in nicely without a lot of ruffling once we press it to the wrong side of the strap. All right, that should do it. A lot of little confetti pieces here. Just get these out of the way. Okay. So I'm going to use the stay stitching as a guide. It's really guide stitching if you want to be technical about it. The guide stitching, just turn that stitching to the wrong side of the strap so it's not going to show on the outside, and then press the seam allowance to the wrong side of the strap. And see how these little notches start to overlap on themselves? That's why we do those, because otherwise they would be creating ruffles of fabric where we don't want ruffles. Okay, so this is what you're looking for, and you're going to have one that's interfaced and one that's not interfaced, right? So, and this is just for one side. You're going to have one set on each side. Okay, so I'm just showing you one side. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is put these right sides together. And I'm going to start by pinning my underarm seam to match those. And we're going to stitch this inner edge on the machine. But there's a point that you need to be very aware of. And that is these two dots right here that are marked on the pattern. I'm going to give myself an X here with my pin so that I know to stop stitching there. We need to leave that open to insert the back of the halter strap in to create that shape in the back. So between those two dots will stay open. And we're going to stitch this short end, which is the end that's going to become the overlap at the center back neck for where the hooks and bars go. Okay, now I'm going to take this over to the machine and I'm going to stitch this inner U and that short end. Okay, here we go. To back stitch. I'm going to break my stitching here and start again at the next circle. Okay, now I'm going to pivot to sew this short end. And just make sure that these seam allowances stay pressed in, and you're going to stitch over them. we go. Okay, next thing we're going to do is grade our seam allowances. So the uninterfaced side is going to be the shorter seam allowance. So this can be about 1/8 of an inch. And then the interfaced one will be a little bit taller, so about 1/4 inch. So do that all the way around where you just stitched. And then we're going to press it in. Okay, so you're going to want to trim away from these corners as well. And then I would also recommend doing just little clips, not notches. This is an inner curve, right? So you would clip rather than notch just around that tight inner corner here. Okay. And now we will flip the whole thing right side out and press it flat. And flip that back corner. You know, just poke the corner out with your nail or with a pin or something like that. And now we're going to press this whole thing flat. And just make sure that you roll these little corners, or, you know, the tight curves all the way out. And you're looking for each side of this to be like on top of each other. You want them to be roughly the same size here, because we're going to sandwich it over the bodice and then top stitch both sides in place. So you'll see what I mean when we get a couple steps down the road here. Okay, so this is what you're looking for. It should be pressed nice and flat like this. And you're looking for this to be pretty uniform, the two layers around the outer edge, for them, those edges to be right on top of each other. Okay, so that is it. I've completed one full side. I did the other side off camera. And we're going to come back and talk about the collar next. Okay, so we are ready to sew the collar. And again, this is optional. So if you don't want to do a collar, you can skip this step. But what you're going to do is, again, I'm working with just one set. You have one interfaced and one non-interfaced, one on each side. And I'm going to show you one side here. So you're going to put the collar pieces right side together. And we are going to stitch around these two sides, the unnotched sides of the collar piece. So at 5/8 of an inch, pivoting at this corner, and then finishing just at this little corner here and back stitching. Okay, so yet again, we are going to be grading our seam allowances, and the uninterfaced one will be the shorter one. Okay, and finally just trim away from the corner. And now we're going to turn this right side out. And just turn out that corner. Grab my point presser. And you can use one of these to just gently push out the corner. Oops, I tried to put that back into my pincushion. Okay, so now we're going to press this flat and just roll out that seam line to the edge. And it's worth mentioning that on our pleather version that we did, the Elvis-inspired one, we did top stitch around the outer edges of the collar to just give it a really flat, like sleek finish. So that is an option. I'm not going to do that on this linen one though. So all I need to do now is just baste closed this open edge, these two seam allowances together. So the notched edge, I'm going to use a long machine stitch. Baste those closed. And you can give it one more final press here just to make sure that's going to lay nice and flat. And repeat those steps for the other side of the collar. And then when I come back, we're going to talk about doing the final steps on the halter strap and inserting the collar into the strap. Okay, so now is the time to put together the halter strap, the collar, and to stitch it onto the bodice, stitching all the way around. So this is a few steps, so just watch it all through one time and hopefully you'll get the hang of it. So we have this open side of the halter strap, and that is what we are going to sandwich the bodice into. So remember, we have this raw underarm section of the bodice. So start here, and you're going to just overlap this and sandwich it between the layers. So the seam allowances are sandwiched there. All right, so start pinning here, and you're going to be pinning through all layers here. Okay, and now we're going to take our collar, if you have one, and you're going to place the wrong side of the collar, should be facing up, because remember, this is going to get folded out here. And we're going to now sandwich the collar between the layers of the halter strap. And what you're looking for is for the bodice and the collar to meet exactly at this circle point right here. All right, so that when we roll this out, there's no gap between the two. And this is a great place to hand baste if you're into that kind of thing. You could hand baste the collar in place here. Otherwise, you're just going to be using a lot of pins and really taking your time here. See how it's open up here too? We're going to be edge stitching all the way around the halter strap and closing any open edges and sandwiching the bodice and the collar in there. Okay, so same thing, we're going around to the back now. You're going to want to pin these open edges together. And now we're going to take this short end that's not finished, and you see how you have these circle marks at the back neckline. You're going to pop this in here like so, 5/8 of an inch. Now This, if you didn't make a muslin, which you really should have, you are going to want to check the length of this strap, okay? You don't want to edge stitch this all in and then find out that you need a shorter strap. So you might want to try this on, you know, baste everything, try it on, and make sure that your strap length is correct. You don't need to shorten it. Okay, so this is roughly what it should look like. You've got a lot of pins, you've got a circular thing going on here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to edge stitch all the way around this outer edge, and you're going to be sandwiching the collar in between. And it's a little tough because you need to be catching the seam allowance underneath in your stitching. So that's why your pinning and pressing and everything is so important. And just so you know, if you accidentally don't catch this inner edge, you can always go back and do a little hand stitching on the inside. So don't fret too much about it, but see if you can get those layers to match up as you're stitching. Okay, so we're going to do the outer edge, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do I want to do that end and this inner edge as well. So we have uniform edge stitching around each side. Okay, so if you like, you could use an edge stitch foot here. Okay, so I'm going to switch out to my edge stitch foot. That's the number 10 foot if you're a Bernina user. And I'm going to switch the needle in so that I'm stitching about 1/8 of an inch from the edge here. Okay. So all the way around the outer edge, just take it slow. And you can be checking with your left hand, whichever hand you're not using, that you're catching the open edge underneath, right, in your stitching. Okay, so I finished stitching around that inner edge, and I haven't, this is still pinned here. So if you wanted to check your length here without all the pins in it, this would be a good place too. And so I did miss my stitching a little bit on the inside of the collar, so I'm just gonna go back and hand stitch here, but I'm very pleased that I caught it all the way around the inside of the underarm, okay? So that's what you're looking for, and if you have any open areas like this, just go back with a hand needle and thread and close them up. Okay, so now I'm gonna finish my stitching by doing this short end and then this inner loop here. So it's a little weird because now my work is to the right of my needle, which I always find super awkward, but it's what has to happen here. Okay, so I'm going to pivot here. Okay, so I just stopped where I met up with my previous stitching. Okay, and now we have one completed halter strap. And you're gonna do the same thing on the other side with the other halter strap. And then we're gonna come back and talk about finishing details. Okay, so let's just talk about some of the finishing work that you are going to do on your top. I want to talk about the swing tack detail, which I really love, because if you don't do the swing tack, your collar is going to be kind of flopping around and it won't really sit the way that you want it to. So you should have some circles on your pattern, which will match the underside of the collar to the halter strap. And I'm going to show you how to do the swing tack now. So you're going to thread your needle with 4 strands of thread. So do a quadruple strand here. And then we're going to anchor our thread with a knot in the end at your circle on your halter strap, and then take 1 more stitch on top of that. Okay, and now start to take another stitch, but do not pull the loop all the way closed, all right? You're going to grab onto the loop with the 2 fingers of your left hand, or your non-dominant hand, I guess, and use your, what finger is this called? Your pointer finger, I guess, to grab the thread off the needle and pull it through like that. And then it's kind of like a cat's cradle. You're just gonna like keep pulling the thread through the loop like that. And it's gonna build up this little thread chain. So you have to, when you pull it through, you have to pull it tight down to the strand. And this is a cool technique. It's not just for stuff like this, it's for like on the princess coat, for say, you would connect the lining to the outer coat at the hem with a swing tack, right? Or a pencil skirt, like the Stanwyck skirt, to keep the lining from riding up. All right, so once you've built up a 1/2 inch of thread chain, then you're going to take your needle, put it through the loop, and pull it through 1 final time, so it's like knotted off. Then you will take a stitch at the dot on the underside of your collar. Don't go all the way through your collar, right? You don't want to see this from the right side of the collar. So make sure you're just grabbing the underside, and you're going to pull it all the way to your thread chain. And then you're going to take a stitch here and knot it off. All right, and if you're worried about this coming done, you can always take 1 more knot, like so, and then trim it close, like that. Okay, so that is your swing tack, and when you wear it, this is going to help the collar stay folded out, but not look like it's, you know, tacked down. It's just going to be floating here. So that's a really cool detail. And then the final finishing thing is to do the hook and bar at the back neck. So let me show you that on one of the finished versions here. This is the little strawberry romper. So you can see you'll have a little underlap section. It's 2 inches on the size I made, where you'll have 2 inches of overlapped back halter strap. And you're going to place 2 hooks and bars. So the bars can be on the underlap side and the hooks are on the overlap side to hold the layers in place. So you're just going to place them and then stitch them on by hand like that, so it closes nice and neat. And that's it. Your halter top is done. Okay, everyone, that is it, your Las Vegas halter top. I hope you loved sewing this today. We have learned so much, including this new style of halter strap with the self-faced halter. We have the fully lined bodice, this fabulous collar with the swing tack, and then your separating lapped zipper in the back. So I cannot wait to see what you do with this pattern. There are so many possibilities with the interchangeability, as well as all the different fabrics you could experiment with. So I can't wait to see your versions. Don't forget to tag me. And thank you all so much for being patrons, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.